don't want to sell me.
I don't want to sell you.
I want to go home and rethink your life.
I want to go home and rethink my life.
Radio Free Infinite episode 371, part 2 of the In Flames experience, getting into perhaps their most classical epoch. Certainly, when you think of Gothenburg metal, when you think of In Flames, the albums we're going to be talking about this week are probably the ones that most people are familiar with, although let's be real, there's a pretty good chance you're probably hiding a copy of Lunar Strain under those Nile CDs that you bought when you first got into extreme metal, in that corner of your bookshelf that you don't want the Vothana guy to find out about. Don't worry, I won't tell him. But this week, we are moving on to the second and third In Flames albums, the ones that really established them as a band. They're no longer just a wacky Jesper Stromblad studio project, and unfortunately that means no more Daniel Erlandson on drums and no more Henke Force on vocals.
Oh no! This is horrible!
However, this shift was probably way better for the health of the band as an artistic endeavor overall, even if I am gonna miss the vocals from the Dark Tranquility guy and the Dawn guy.
I'm gonna cry like a baby. Boo hoo hoo.
It's still essentially the same songwriting team of the main guy, Jesper, and his co-guitarist, Glenn Ljungström. But now we've got a full-time vocalist in the form of Anders Frieden, who has jumped ship from Dark Tranquility to join In Flames, as well as Bjorn Gelot. Bjorn Gelato. That Bjorn guy. We got him on drums, we got a full-time drummer. In the third epoch of In Flames' career that we're not going to be covering this week, that guy would actually become a lot more important to the overall songwriting process. I don't know actually much about where this guy came from. Apparently, he was previously drumming in a death metal band called Flesh of Sights. I tried searching around for an actual copy of their demo somewhere, but all I found was some weird AI Japanese voice reading his Wikipedia page or some shit.
ファーストアルバムリリース後の目立った活動はなく、現状は不明。
But the point is, once the second In Flames album, Jester Race, comes out, we've got a full band of people that are pretty much only doing this band, and we can go on tours and get signed to bigger labels that give us proper US distribution of our records. And eventually a bunch of dorks from New England are going to hear our albums, take away all the wrong lessons, invent modern melodic metalcore, and ruin fucking everything.
God fucking damn it!
But I don't really hold too much animosity towards In Flames for that, because the Jester Race is a fantastic album. One of the first albums I ever heard that had death metal vocals on it, and I still listen to it pretty regularly after first hearing it probably over 20 years ago. And if you're a fan of older In Flames, you probably could have seen this coming, because they did that demo of 2 new songs during the Subterranean sessions that both ended up sounding outstanding, that being Dead Eternity and the Inborn Lifeless, which went on to be called Dead God in Me on the full-length version. Speaking of which, Dead Eternity, holy fuck, what a song. Probably my favorite In Flames song of all time, probably just one of my favorite songs in general of all time. And it's the song from this era of In Flames that most shows them evolving the very complex songwriting formula of their early material even further. I mean, check out this beginning right here. Boom! Actual fucking blast beat in an In Flames song with these furious guitar harmonies that then smooth themselves out over the top of a thick, soupy rhythm guitar riff, which would become standard for this album's era. Sort of like an overture section before it all collapses and we get into the main meat of the song with a nice cleanly done bass line. And some cool narrative vocals from Anders. I don't know how he ended up sounding so wimpy later on, because he sounds fucking powerful right here. Like, that was a solid fucking scream. And then we get more of those soupy sounding, very thick rhythm guitar riffs that still maintain that constant sense of harmony that's so important to In Flames. From there, groove riff. The thrash influence is pretty much been excised from this music, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. This new, more groove-oriented style, it shows off how they can maintain that constant level of twin guitar harmonies, not even just during the lead guitar sections. The rhythm riffs themselves are all expertly harmonized. Sometimes it even becomes hard to pick that out, because with the way this album's produced, it almost just sounds like one big fucking guitar. But what really fucking made this my favorite In Flames song is the actual lead guitar section towards the middle, the last third of the track. Because you kind of feel like the song's all going one way, like this right here would sort of be the verse riff, and it's a solid fucking verse riff, those thick fucking harmonized riffs. But then instead of going into the chorus, again for its second iteration, they move that guitar riff farther up the neck in order to generate tension and variation in the music. Also, they can explode into an evolution of that groove break style they had back on Lunar Strain. Check this out. That little motif you heard right there is like one of the best things to ever come out of Gothenburg, bar none. And this cool fucking slow-burning melodic solo over those heavy fucking chug riffs, also outstanding. Then they go back into that, I don't know, death metal polka kind of motif, just so fucking heavy. But it's setting them up for a transition into a section that was not on the demo version of the song, which is why I prefer the album version. Because this whole fucking lead guitar section right here, it's like a much more aggressive and much more mysterious response to those initial lead guitar melodies. And then the groove section that's transitioning us back into the song proper also just has a really cool fucking riff. But when they go back into those melodies from the earlier part of the song, now given extra heft and force due to the context of that really long lead guitar section, I mean, that's just good fucking songwriting, dude. The standout portions of the music are given this macrocosmic significance. I mean, there's a reason, 8th grade, 9th grade, whatever it was, Jub was walking home from school humming that. Part, the way they set that up in the song and the way it pays off just like engraved it onto my DNA. The lessening of the thrashy influences, which I did like the thrash parts on Lunar Strain a whole lot, but scaling that back also enabled the melancholic and folky aspects of the music to really stand out on this record. Like on the classic opening track, Moonshield. It has this really dry, dusty, post-apocalyptic melancholia to it that very much matches the atmosphere of that incredible Andreas Marshall album cover. Longing for the past but realizing mistakes made back then led us to where we are today. Then the distortion kicks in and it's these thick, soupy harmonized groove bits I was talking about earlier. So thick that some of the harmony is obscured. You can really hear this when you compare it to live versions. Like when it's less produced, you can actually hear how the rhythm guitar is doing all this cool chord stuff underneath that lead guitar riff. But the album version has the benefit of making everything sound like one just giant musical organism, with every element kind of blending together. Gives it a real sense of emotional significance. I mean, they're one of my favorite bands, so sometimes I'm going to be in the mood for the live version, sometimes I'm in the mood for the studio version. It's fun to compare the two. Also, this melody is so fucking long, might even be longer than the kind of shit Amorphous was doing on Black Winter Day. Total melodic staircase riff. Moving into another acoustic section, which isn't just a segue like it was on early In Flames stuff. The acoustic stuff here is worked into the overall narrative of the songs here much more cohesively. And it's a big part of why when the distortion does kick back in, it's got a lot more emotional weight to it. Also, this whole section right here is a really cool sort of counterpoint to that thick, soupy rhythm guitar riff from the beginning of the song. And the way they wrap it up with a little full stop here is quite nicely done. Before then, they head back to the eternal turn of the wheel with those super long melodic phrases. For me, this is a very pagan-sounding album. Not necessarily associated with any particular pagan tradition, but it just feels very turning of the cosmic wheel, cycles of existence type stuff going on. And that's helped out a lot by the lyrics, which are very much worth looking up. They're written by Niklas Sundin from Dark Tranquillity, based on concepts given to him by Anders. They've even got quotations from poets like William Wordsworth kind of of woven into the overall lyrical fabric that matches the sort of post-apocalyptic yet archaic and pagan kind of vibe. Like, obviously every song on this album is fantastic, but I want to talk about something really fucking nuts that happens during kind of a sleeper track on the album, December Flower. It's got the same sort of super aggressive harmonies that Dead Eternity did, but then they drop in this special guest guitar solo from some guy named Frederick Johansson. I don't even think he was in any bands at the time. He was just some guy working in the studio. But holy fuck, man, this solo, one of my favorite solos of all time, very much fits in that In Flames mode of having solos that tell stories instead of just shred. It's got a lot of its own motifs that repeat and come back in new forms over the course of the song. And this fucking little repetitive section right here that he uses to close out this massive solo section, some of the coolest shit ever. Then these little descending sort of ornamental bits that bring us back into the song proper. You know, not to get too memey with it, but
this motherfucker don't miss.
No, he's fucking good.
That motherfucker don't miss, man.
He's good.
also this fucking fast part right here sounds like something off of a fucking Gorefest album, and it's fantastic. You know, most people, they talk about Jester Race, they talk about Moonshield, they talk about Artifacts of the Black Rain. Fuck that, dude. December Flower. This song needs to be discussed more. It's a banger. As is the Black Ash Inheritance EP, came out a little bit after Jester Race. Very much continues the Jester Race style, but it does kind of a wacky setup for the third full-length In Flames album. Because in the middle of this EP, which is very much, it's, you know, a continuation of Jester Race, you got this acoustic medley featuring themes and motifs that appeared all over Jester Race, most of them from Artifacts of the Black Rain or Dead Eternity. Like, you remember this bit here, right, don't you? And here's a cool little acoustic rendition of that sick fucking groove riff from that particular song. Some very subtle, I think that's Mellotron keyboard in the background, could be something else. Then they're going back into that awesome fucking lead guitar motif. But then they hit you with this shit. Like, if you're an In Flames fan, you're hearing this for the first time in early 1997, you're like, where the fuck did this melody come from? This wasn't on Jester Race. This shit is fucking mind-blowing. And then they just go back into the Artifacts of the Black Rain Redux shit. You're like, okay, what the fuck was that? I'll tell you what that was. That was In Flames sneaking in a little taster of where they're going with album number 3, Whoracle, which, much like Jester Race, is an absolute fucking masterpiece. And that little melody, they just snuck past you. That's the opening bit to another one of the best songs of all time, that being Whoracle's opening track, Jotun. Lineup is the exact same as the last album, and it's very much a continuation of Jester Race, with the melodies getting even more long form and simultaneously more catchy, like this opening bit right here. Then they jump into some full stop shit. Then they come back in all fast and aggressive with some great double bass, real expansive harmonies, leading into kind of a stop-start section with more cool narration from Anders. Again, I don't know why he chooses to sing the way he does on their later stuff, because he actually has a really cool voice for communicating these kind of very philosophical lyrics, reinterpreting pagan apocalyptic concepts and using them to look at the ills of modern society. This whole album is actually a concept album, but you really have to look for that in the lyrics to figure that shit out. But you don't gotta look around for it too hard on this album. There's awesome fucking melodic riffs, like what we're hearing right now. These harmonies do not fuck around. And this song's full of them, but what I really wanted to get to with this song happens pretty much right at the end of it. After this very Germanic power metal sounding kind of chug bit here, definitely sounds like a downtuned version of Running Wild. But then they hit you with this variation of that amazing fucking intro riff that they introduced way back in the Black Ash Inheritance EP. They kind of turned the whole thing inside out. People trying to tell you that In Flames simplified death metal songwriting, don't fucking listen, because there's plenty of clever shit like this going on here. And the fact that it's done in such a melodic way actually makes these very clever songwriting choices stick out even more. Comparing this album to Jester Race, the other album from this era of In Flames, gun to my head, I don't know if anything on Whoracle quite hits the height heights of Dead Eternity. But overall, I would say the guitar playing is a little bit more complex and clever in how it's integrated into the overall songwriting on Whoracle compared to Jester Race. You can really hear that in some of the combinations of double guitar harmonies with off-kilter chugs in songs like Worlds Within the Margin, which starts out with this absolute monolith of a riff, multi-section with a tremolo picked tail, then it gets iterated upon with a different drum beat from Bjorn Galotte. Maybe not as technically complex as something Daniel Erlandson would do, but he's really good at picking out the right beat for the situation. Then it all switches up to a more major key variation that takes us into the verse section of the song, which is very odd. Like this Anders guy, he's all mixed up. He does harsh vocals during the clean verses, during the distorted intro. He does clean narration. I don't know what the fuck's going on here. Here's another really good example of something they started doing on Jester Race, where they managed to incorporate guitar harmonies into groovy, chug-heavy rhythm guitar sections. It's subtle, but it's there. It's all rather hypnotic with its constant mid-paced pulse as we go into this ascending sort of pre-solo section with a nice little harmonized kind of slide in. And as you would expect, it's in flames, it's the 90s, solos are plentiful and quite memorable, kind of winding their way around that more groove-oriented riff. Kind of the same thing going on as with Mozart. It's just all scales. It shouldn't be that impressive, but it really is. Then it goes into another really cool sort of atmospheric section, utilizing keyboards. The drums speed up a little bit. The guitars get almost kind of ambient black metal-ish. I never really hear people talk about Worlds Within the Margin, but I gotta say, definite standout on Whoracle for me. It's kind of tucked away amongst the more well-known songs. But speaking of getting real atmospheric and weird, there's a song on this album that gets even stranger than Worlds Within the Margin, that being Jester's script Transfigured, which is one of the most cleverly written pieces of melodic death metal that I've ever come across. It starts out actually rather Pink Floyd-ish, this combination of psychedelia and folky acoustics, all pushing onwards, albeit rather lackadaisically, into the distorted guitar section. Then you got this nice waltzy kind of thing going on, and they're sort of hinting at the song's main melody, but they never come outright and state, hey, this is the melodic riff for this song. They always kind of dance around it. They never play it the same way each time. So when it goes back into the acoustics, it feels like, okay, this has to be the main melody right here, right? But they refuse to just, like, stick on it. Each time they play it, it's slightly different. They're like melodic velociraptors.
That's right, but they never attack the same place twice.
Of course, then they gotta hit you with this reversed but not actually reversed kind of weird fucking section. Then the distortion comes back in. You think they're gonna be normal for a second, but even when they're doing their standard guitar harmonies, they're not sticking down to that one melody. They're always moving some section up a little bit or doing some weird little flourish. It's real fucking loosey-goosey. Then they come back in with this counterpoint, this little bit of harmony here, which of course is beautifully done. All this sort of screwing around means that Jester's script Transfigured is the longest song on the album by a considerable margin, and probably just the weirdest and most adventurous. Again, another sort of a deep cut. It's one of my favorite songs, but I don't hear people mention it too often. We probably should talk a little bit about some of the more popular songs on the album, so here we go.
Race to the finish.
You got the Hive, really powerful, aggressive guitar harmony that when it cycles back to the root note feels like a fucking hammer blow. Then you got episode 666, where the guitar harmony kind of slyly crawls out from under the chugging and the vocal fracas. Then there's the gonzo fucking death metal cover of a Depeche Mode song right at the end of the album. Utilizing the ingredients of melodic death metal to create something that actually mimics the emotions and sonic textures of the original song, despite being in an entirely different genre. There's three real big highlights for you this album. It's tricky because the whole fucking album is highlights. Jester Race and Whoracle are both pretty much flawless albums, and the bedrock of the claim that, hey, In Flames, I swear to God, guys, they used to be really fucking good. But we're not quite done with the In Flames boys yet. We do have a part 3 coming up, covering the next era of the band. So if any of the prior 2 parts interested you, you're going to want to tune in for that. Thanks for listening or watching or whatever the fuck you did, and I'll see you next time.
Come on, let's go. Out. You here again, I'm gonna crack your ass.